Good morning, everyone. This is Stacy from Las Vegas. I was looking through some articles and stuff this morning. I had to share this one because uh, it kind of validated how I felt last week's testimony went. I mean, I've read a lot of articles that it appears that the writing for the prosecution, calling these guys gunmen and, um, you know, how they were in the wrong for standing up for their rights and stuff like that. But this article from the Nevada Independent um, discusses the point that not all law enforcement felt in danger during the Bundy standoff. The federal officers that testified last week, they talk about how they felt intimidated and how they felt the threat level went up because the people wouldn't stay in the First Amendment zone, which really wasn't a First Amendment zone. I mean, there's a lot of contradictions going on the stand during these testimonies, but they are all, you know, adamant that they felt threatened there. And so I wanted to read this article from the Nevada Independent Journal. It says the Bureau of Land Management Special Agent Rand Stover was working on a little sleep on the morning of April 12th when the federal government's attempt to impound Bunkerville rancher Cliven Bundy's cattle turned extremely tense. They're coming, Stover's boss, BLM Regional Special Agent in Charge Dan Love said. Get everyone to the front gate. It was shortly before noon. The decision already had been made to discontinue the court order BLM cattle roundup, which was conducted in response to Bundy's refusal to pay his grazing fees and recognize federal jurisdiction over public land his animals had used for many years. But when the elder Bundy encouraged his family, friends, and followers to cross the interstate in an effort to retrieve nearly 400 of his penned animals, the sparing sides were sent on a collision course that nearly erupted in a shootout. No shots were fired, but 6 men are on trial in federal court accused of using the firearms they brought to the protest to threaten and intimidate federal officers. Testimony revealed the BLM law enforcement agents stationed in the wash that day were very concerned by the presence of high-powered rifles in the crowd and pointed towards them from superior tactical positions on the northbound I-15 bridge. For his part, Stover, during testimony last week, U.S. District Judge Gloria Navarro's courtroom, gave a dramatic recount of events and how they nearly turned deadly. Stover had already had what he described as not a cordial conversation with Ammon Bundy, one of Cliven's sons and a man the prosecution considers a leader of the alleged conspiracy. Stover recalled, he said, "You know what you can do? You can get the hell off our land, and you can leave them cows right there." The BLM Stover said was receiving intelligence from a variety of sources indicating that more protesters were coming to the standoff and some of them were sure to be armed. One Facebook post from a site purported to support the Bundy cause included what Stover described as, in essence, a call to arms. It read, "Stand your ground, do not fire unless fired upon, but if they mean to have a war, let it begin here." Although neither side of the courtroom battle credited the line, it was first spoken by patriot farmer John Parker prior to the Battle of the Lexington and Concord. History trivia aside, the internet's missives and dramatic YouTube footage of Bundy family members being roughed up by BLM Rangers ticked off a lot of people, many of whom already think the federal agency wields too heavy a hand. But here's the challenge of waving too many flags and bleaching too many patriot bromides. According to the FBI, Stover testified, there was significant information that persons identifying themselves as militia members were on their way to Bunkerville. A deputy assistant director of the FBI told BLM and the U.S. Forest Service law enforcement personnel on duty that the Bureau had never seen that number of purported militia groups rallying at the same time. There was a significant risk of a violent encounter, Stover said he learned. According to the agent's testimony, they felt plenty of fear at being placed in the crosshair of armed protesters. BLM Special Agent Michael Johnson also testified about the fear he felt after being menaced by gunmen, including one using a spotted scope and a rangefinder of the kind used by long-distance shooters. Johnson kept hidden behind a portable light generator. It was there, he said, he saw something that gave him pause. Nevada Highway Patrol troopers out of their vehicles on the southbound bridge above him, walking casually through the crowd of protesters. On the other end of the bridge, a Metro vehicle was parked with an officer out of his car. They didn't appear bothered much by the protesters with guns. I'm still confused to this day, Johnson said, of the NHP troopers' comparatively casual presence. I don't exactly know what they were doing. Nor does it explain the casual professional approach of Metro Deputy Chief Tom Roberts in a video. He found time to smile and chat with a reporter around the time federal agents felt they were in the crosshairs of alleged gunmen. It's what some courtroom observers might call a little daylight for the defense. If the NHP and Metro personnel weren't shaking in their boots, was it because the government's claim of imminent danger was overblown? Defendant Todd Engel of Idaho, representing himself in the trial, seized the moment. He put Johnson through the agent's resuscitation of the timeline and illustrated visually with surveillance video and photographs to raise the issue of whether the emotional response was reflected by the crowd size. The defendants also raised the issue of whether the federal agents were conducting themselves in an aggressive manner despite already being informed that the roundup was being discontinued. Was that you on the loudspeaker shouting that you would shoot the protesters as they came forward? Engel asked. No, it was not, Johnson replied. After a week of testimony, a more detailed picture of the standoff that nearly ended in tragedy is beginning to emerge. This is the third column in a series on the Bundy trial by John L. Smith. You can read his first column here. So the point was made last week. I mean, you have Metro and other local officers walking among the crowd of protesters that were armed, and they didn't feel threatened. The sheriff came from behind BLM, walking up to the gate, ended up putting himself between the BLM and the protesters, and at that time he still didn't feel like he was in danger. He didn't feel threatened or intimidated by the protesters at all. So these trained men that have been trained in military tactics, it starts to appear as if they see everything and everyone as a threat. So I'm really glad that the Nevada Independent put out this article, because I think the point was made very clear last week in testimony that, their feelings weren't exactly in line with what was actually going on down there on the ground. And that is supported by local law officials that had no problem being among the protesters and didn't feel their life was in danger. They didn't feel threatened and they didn't feel intimidated. So I just wanted to share this, guys, with you, and I hope you guys have a good day. Bye.